After the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, the American military staged a secret revenge bombing in order to set an example and boost morale, which contributed heavily to the later overall victory and compromise of World War II. This is their story. The year is 1941. The United States is the sole major military power in the Pacific Ocean, and the Depression has just ended in the United States. War is raging throughout Europe. Hitler and the Axis are in conflict with many governments throughout Europe and are moving through Poland, France, and the continent. In a surprise attack on December 7, 1941, the Japanese Empire upsets the American military complex at Pearl Harbor. The United States enters the war. The death toll runs in the thousands, and America is shell-shocked. President Roosevelt pronounces the day one that will live in infamy. FDR and the military strategize and initiate a bomb raid on the Japanese mainland, dispatching Army Air Corps General Henry Hap Arnold and Navy Admiral William Bull Halsey to the mission. Arnold orders Lieutenant Colonel James H. Jimmy Doolittle to the raid project. Doolittle is a decorated combat pilot and holder of numerous aeronautical records. Doolittle, an Army Air Corps pilot, saw that land-based bombers such as the consolidated B-24 Liberator were no longer part of the solution, with the loss of strategic Pacific air bases to the Japanese military. Carrier-based Navy airplanes such as the Grumman TBF Avenger were also out of the picture, with just 250 miles of range, dangerously close for the Navy carriers. It seemed a creative solution was needed. Then, a clever soul in the Pentagon solves the issue. Land-based bombers could be launched from carriers a safe distance from Japan, bomb their targets, then fly to friendly nationalist airfields in China.
Doolittle picks the new North American B-25 Mitchell medium bomber as his aircraft, and the 17th Bombardment Group of Fort Pendleton, Oregon, as his crew.
Over 100 crew members were told they had been selected for a very dangerous mission and that they could drop out if they liked. No one did. Training commenced in Florida early in 1942, teaching pilots new methods to take off from runways measuring just 800 feet in length, contrary to the mile-long fields they were used to.
After 6 weeks of arduous training, they deployed to California, where USS Hornet, a brand new aircraft carrier, was loaded with 16 B-25 bombers. Hornet was accompanied by 4 cruisers, 8 destroyers, and an aircraft carrier, USS Enterprise. Overall, about half of the United States Pacific Fleet is present.
5,000 sailors and crew members manned the fleet through a fuel stop in Hawaii, with the force, quote, bound for Tokyo, end quote, in the words of Admiral Bull Halsey.
However, on April 18, 1942, they were spotted by a small radar boat, Nido Maru, whose sailors were gunned down and hull sunk, but not before they could get a signal to Tokyo and compromise the mission. Doolittle, after conferring with the Pentagon, orders the launch of the raid that same morning. In true military style, all the aircraft were off the deck by 8 o'clock a.m.
The bomb group flew over the Pacific for several hours before reaching their targets on the Japanese mainland. When they got there, they were met by friendly waves and a peaceful sky. The Japanese thought that they were native aircraft. The bombers positioned themselves over their targets, and the bombardiers let the bombs drop. Incendiaries rained down on Tokyo, Kobe, Nagoya, Yokohama, Yokosuka, and Osaka. An aircraft carrier in dry dock was hit, as were the factories and other industrial targets, crippling Tokyo's capabilities for the time being. When stacked up against later American air raids, the impact was relatively small. At most, 50 people were killed, with perhaps 400 injured. However, the job was far from done. The group turned west to fly to Manchuria, hoping to land in China, which, while occupied, had friendly free forces. Unfortunately, most of the aircraft ran out of fuel. Doolittle ordered his crew to bail out, and others followed suit. Some attempted to land in fields as well. Surviving raider Dick Cole, who was Doolittle's co-pilot, said, "They don't give you a Purple Heart for self-inflicted injuries." Many crew members had never used a parachute before. Cole gave himself a black eye, pulling on the ripcord. Cole landed in a tree and spent the night there. He was found by the Chinese, who carried him by sedan chair to Doolittle.
Doolittle, after expressing his view that he would be court-martialed upon his return to the United States, led the group on a trek to the southern Chinese coast, where they were picked up by a Navy ship and arrived back home by July 1942. Doolittle's crew was lucky, with only minor scratches. Others, not so. Most crews had serious injuries, including broken bones and deep gashes. Pilot Ted Lawson lost a leg from infection, and one crew were interned in the Soviet Union before being released. 8 men were captured by the Japanese, of which 3 were executed and 1 starved to death in a prisoner of war camp. The remaining raiders arrived home after the conflict as national heroes, having proved to the world that the United States could and would fight back against the Japanese. Morale was boosted, examples were set, and the war began. The Japanese, it seemed, were no longer untouchable, and America mobilized against its enemies around the world. The raid served as a reminder of American military might for years to come, with Ted Lawson, a raider, writing 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, a 1944 hit Van Johnson film about the raid. In sum, Doolittle's raid on Tokyo provided a backdrop for the later military movements of World War II. It proved that the United States is a force to be reckoned with. The Japanese lost momentum and valuable time, momentum that they never gained back. The victory of the raid provided an example for later military movements. Travel in small groups at key times in a surprising and forceful way.